Alright, in this video, I just want to think out loud here about some things I've been thinking about concerning Revelation and the end times. And basically, these thoughts have come out because I was actually listening to this fella, Nelson Walters. I think that's his name, and that's the name of his channel. And he has a different point of view on the book of Revelation and prophecy than I do. He doesn't believe in the pre-tribulation rapture. So I just was listening to him, hearing him out, and he believes some interesting things about Daniel's statue, that the iron is not Rome, but Islam. And he seems to be very heavily on this Islamic Antichrist. I'm not saying what he's saying is wrong. I'm saying it's different, and I wanted to hear him out. Now, concerning his point of view on the iron of Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2, that the iron is Islam, I have to disagree because all of those kingdoms have something in common. The Babylon, the gold, Medo-Persia, the silver, Greece, the bronze, and then putting Rome in as the iron, and then Rome changed with the iron and clay, that they all have something in common. And that is that they actually had dominion over, had a lot of control over the state, the nation of Israel. Islam, no. They eventually took the land known as Israel, but they didn't have control over Israel as a people, as a nation. And that's what actually has all these kingdoms in connection, because obviously there was other kingdoms of the world that had an actual influence over the world, such as over in North America, or you could bring up the Mongolians and Genghis Khan and the hordes and whatnot. You've got all these other things going on around the world, but it has to do with Israel. That's what that statue is about. That's what God cares about. Israel, right? That's what his focus is on. That's why each one of those kingdoms has to do with actually having control over the nation of Israel. Because of their sins, he's letting the Gentiles rule over them. Right? So the way he sees the iron as actually Islam, and then he was actually saying that the feet of iron and clay, the clay is actually Rome. I was like not really seeing that, but it's interesting that I was actually thinking the opposite, that the clay represents mixture of three groups. Israel, when they were saying we have no God but Caesar. Christians, when they wanted to make the pagan pontiff the bishop of bishops of the Christian church, they did the same thing. We have no king but Caesar. And now we have Islam flooding into Europe, and the Pope just made this deal having to do with the Islamic family house, creating Chrislam, where Christianity mixing in, not Christianity, more like Catholicism mixing in with Islam. And of course, Judaism is supposed to be mixed in there, but not really. And yeah, so that seems to make more sense. It fits. But anyway, this video is going to be a bit of a kind of ranting and rambling, just thinking out loud. So it's going to be kind of a mess. It's not an organized thing where I'm teaching something, explaining anything. And yeah, I can see I did my own haircut and it looks slanted, but it's not. It's actually my head is slanted. Okay, so just to get that out of the way. I was going to mention that in the last video I did, but I forgot to do that, and I just happened to look up and see that. So yeah, I'll explain that. Anyway, one of the main things that got me to want to do this video was listening to him talk about Revelation chapter 12. And he was talking about how this is a mirror. And he was saying some things that actually got me thinking, because I was actually trying to put things together, and I was noticing that in Revelation we have, it seems to be 2 points of view of the same story. Because you got to realize that Jews, with the Hebrew mindset they have, is that they don't think in a linear way. They think of it as like night and day, night and day, night and day, week, 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 month, 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 season, 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 year, year, year. It's a constant repeating, right? An example is Genesis chapter 1, and then it's repeated Genesis chapter 2, but it's told differently, right? And you get told the stories over and over, but in different ways from different points of view. You might have actually seen a movie or even a TV show where they've done this. You've gone through the story, and it's about a quarter of the way through the movie, and it looks like it's already going to be the end, and it stops, and it retells the story from a different character's point of view and how they got to that same point. And then after it tells you like 3, 4, 5 different points of view, all of a sudden now it all comes together and you see the end, right? You know, there's different movies put together like that. Sometimes with shows as well, right? That's kind of how we see the Jews, how they explain things. They don't just go, here's A, here, and here's Z, and then they fill it in. How do you get from A to Z? No, it's kind of like they might tell you A, Z, and then the next time it's A to M, and then A, B, C, D, and then X, Y, Z. And so you're getting little pieces, and then you have to take it together, and then you have to line it up yourself to put it in the mindset that you have to be able to see it how we tend to see it. And I don't know if the camera's backwards, so when I go like this to this, if you're seeing left to right, like I'm putting it, or if you're seeing right to left backwards. But either way, you know, I'm sure you'll figure it out. If it's just backwards to me, I don't know. But anyway, getting into this Revelation chapter 12, you can actually see that here. As example here, it talks about the woman being in heaven, and a dragon comes about, seeking to cause her trouble and to go after her child. And how does it end? Well, the dragon's going after the woman and the child. So we see here from what seems to be going on is what is going on in heaven, we're told about, and then after Satan falls, which is the middle of this little mirror here, we see what happens on the earth, right? So just like we see the woman fleeing into the wilderness, and then down here the woman is given 2 wings of an eagle to fly into the wilderness. So we see that it's kind of sandwiched. We're seeing when things happening in the heaven, the things are also happening onto the earth, right? Because this is where we see the dragon was cast onto the earth. And this starts off by saying a great wonder in heaven, right? So I hope you're able to follow along with that, because this might help actually understand Revelation, because this is something I actually use to help explain not Revelation, Matthew 24. People bring up Matthew 24 and they talk about the end times, but they don't see how it's a retelling over and over. It's not telling you point A to point B, or going from A to Z in a normal fashion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's telling you like 1, 8, 9, and then it tells you 1, 2, 10, and it's giving you the little pieces over and over until you get the whole section of 1 to 10. I hope you're figuring out what I'm saying here. Because they tell you the story, and then they retell you the story, and then they retell you the story, and then eventually you get the whole picture. Right? That's basically how they do it. They don't just tell you the story once, and there it is. They tell you from all kinds of different angles. Different views and all this stuff, so that you see it. This is how I'll explain it. They explain it three-dimensionally. That's how I'll say they'll do it, because they're explaining it. Oh, this is how I see it, but somebody on the opposite side, he sees it this way, and then there's this guy in hell. He's looking up and he sees it this way, and then there's the angel looking down from above and he sees it this way, and then God, he's seeing it through all time, and this is how he's seeing it, and then you get this orb of a three-dimensional explanation. And it's complicated to us because we just think in this 2D view, A to Z, 1 to 10, and everything just fits in line, and we just tell the story once, plain, simple, straightforward. This is how it is, right? So we need to take our thinking and mix the two so that we can understand it. So when they tell us the story from one point of view, we need to realize, okay, this is from one point of view. Let's take this, we'll go to the A to the Z, let's put it down, right? And then we go, okay, now he's telling us a point of view, a different point of view, and he's going from A to Z. Let's take that and let's overlap it. Okay, now he's going from a different point of view and he's going A to Z. Let's dissect that, let's take that out, and let's line that up A to Z. And you keep doing that, all the points of view, when he's telling you the same story, and you keep lining it up A to Z, and then you can see it, and then you can actually put it into your own mindset, right? A to Z, 1 to 10. Here we go. Now it makes sense. And Revelation chapter 12 is a perfect way to explain this because of how simple it is, and it shows you it's straightforward. Oops. Sorry about that. Just explaining it one more time. You got things going on in heaven. Woman, and the dragon comes trying to get the woman and the seed of the woman. The middle of this is the dragons cast out. Now things are on the earth, and the same thing's going on. Ends with the woman fleeing and the dragon trying to get after her and the remnant of her seed. So you see how this is mirrored, just the complete opposite from the top to the bottom, and this little section inside here. Now, this guy was able to explain that very well, and that's exactly how I was seeing Revelation. I was trying to think of it from the mindset of John, who would be a Jew, Israelite, a Hebrew. He probably thinks in that manner and explains things in that exact manner. And then knowing that is actually taking that and trying to understand it. Now, another key point to bring up is the church. The church is in the Old Testament. And I know a lot of people say, well, the church in the wilderness with Moses. Yeah, because church means assembly. So I have to be more specific. And that is, the Christian church is in the Old Testament. It's just kind of hidden. It's there. And once you really grasp the New Testament and you look back at the Old Testament, you see that it was all there. Like the Bereans who tested Paul and the things that he was saying, they were like, I don't know about that. And they opened up the Old Testament and they started to see what he was saying, and they were like, okay, it was there. I just didn't see it. And now I can see it. I mean, it makes sense now. It's there, right? I'll give you a couple examples of the church being hidden. First one, Adam and Eve. Eve is the church. Eve was taken out of the rib of Adam. The church came out of Jesus being pierced in the side. Right? We came out of him. One body, one flesh. Adam and Eve, one body, one flesh. We're one body, one flesh with Jesus. The church, right there. The next thing would be Isaac and, is it Rebecca? Sometimes I get Rebecca and Rachel mixed up. I think Rachel was the one Jacob really liked, and Rebecca is Isaac's woman. Right there, you have the church with Rebecca, because you have the servant of Abraham, who represents the Father, and the servant, being the Holy Spirit, goes out into his old land to find a bride for his son, and takes her from her family, and she's willing to go and finally meets Jesus in the promised land, right? She's taken to Jesus. Jesus doesn't come and marry her in this world. She comes out and gets married in his world, right? There's the church. Another one where it's two places where it's really hidden, but it's there, is Joseph. Joseph represents Jesus, betrayed by his brethren. He goes into the world and he ends up being second only to the Pharaoh, representing that it's Jesus, second only to the Father. And he has to have his brethren come back to him during a time of tribulation, when there's famine for 7 years. And they have to come back and realize that he is the Messiah. He is their brother that they betrayed. They don't recognize him because now he's among the Gentiles, right? Jesus among the Gentiles. They don't recognize him as a Jew, as a Messiah, right? And during this time, Joseph married a Gentile woman. Boom, right there you have the church again, the Christian church. Hidden there, but it's there. Another place it's hidden is in Daniel's 70 weeks. Between the 69th and 70th week is the church age. There's a 2,000-year gap, roughly. And it's not there, but it's there. Super hidden. And that's what's going on right here. The whole reason why I talked about that is because the church age, again, is hidden right here. Because when we come over here to, why am I in Genesis? I meant to be in Revelation chapter 3 by here, but this is fine. I can use this to explain. Revelations 2 and 3, right? This is the church age. Revelation 4, the church age ends. John is caught up through the door in heaven, and he's told that he's going to be shown things that come hereafter. So after the church age. Revelation 4 and 5, the church is in heaven. They are the elders who are redeemed from every nation and tongue by the blood of the Lamb, and they are made kings and priests unto God, which is exactly what John tells us we are in Revelation chapter 1, that we are kings and priests unto God, washed in the blood of Jesus. So this is the church age, this is the end of the church age, and this goes back to Daniel's 70th week. That's why I'm going to leave it here, because I'm going to come back to that later. In Revelation 12, the church isn't here anymore. You see how it's talking about the woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet and the crown of 12 stars. This is just like we read in Genesis about Joseph having the dream. Right? He had a dream where he had the 11 stars bow to him and the sun and the moon as well. And his father Jacob was like, really? your brethren are going to bow to you, and even your mother and I are going to bow to you. So we see here that this represents Israel, as the 12 stars represent the 12 tribes, and we got the sun and the moon clothing her and holding her up. This is Israel, right? And represented by the constellation Virgo, the Virgin, and that is personified with Mary, who is the virgin that gives birth to Jesus. And the dragon goes after the woman, but she has the child, and then the dragon tries to devour the child. But then we see that right here in verses 5 and 6 that the child's born. The dragon tries to go after the child, but the child is taken up to heaven. And the woman flees into the wilderness, where she has a place to take care of her for 1,203 days. Right? So the church age is right here. Right there. You see, it's there, but it's hidden. Again, like Daniel's 70 weeks. Because we're focused on who? The Jews. So that little space there is 2,000 years, roughly. Jesus ascends to heaven. A lot of people take that to be the rapture. Makes perfect sense to me because it's representing Jesus' body, one body going up. We're part of his body. And that's why it's not dealing with the church here. It's talking about the woman. It's talking about Israel. Because the church age, not mentioned. Just like in Daniel 70 weeks. It's there, but it's not mentioned. But that's right where it is. Not there. And this is interesting because the Jews have this tradition about the Messiah, that when he comes, he's going to explain the Torah, the law, the prophets. He's going to explain all the words, the letters, but also the spaces, right? And that's exactly what I was thinking about when I was doing this, the spaces. The spaces. And this also ties into Isaiah. I don't remember the chapter, but Jesus talks about how, I'll just explain what he did. He goes into the temple, he opens up the scroll of Isaiah, and he starts reading to everybody about the acceptable year of the Lord, and that he's been anointed of God to preach. But he doesn't finish the verse in Isaiah, because the second half of the verse, because there's a space, right? And that space is meaning something. After the comma, to finish the rest of the verse, talks about the day of vengeance of God. But that's 2,000 years in the future. There's a 2,000-year gap in the middle of that verse. He only reads the first part of it, rolls up the scroll, and is like, how you like them apples? And I think they were like, get out of here. They were telling him to get out of town or whatever. But, yeah. Just examples of how the spaces, even the spaces, there's something there. But we see that the church isn't mentioned because the woman then flees into the wilderness. Right? And there's war in heaven. Michael and his angels stand up. This ties into what we see in Daniel chapter 12, where at the beginning of Daniel chapter 12, what does he talk about? Michael standing up for his people. And how much time is in that period? Well, in Daniel chapter 12, it says that there is a time, times, and a dividing of time. And what do we see right here? The same thing. Right? And Daniel chapter 12 is talking to us about the end of Daniel's 70 weeks. There's actually a grace period, and it's something that is hidden there in the scriptures. You can think of it like this, that the space is like a seed, and it's put in the dirt. You don't see it, you don't notice it, it's there, but the rest of the word is like the water that's nourishing it so that it germinates. And then all of a sudden it shoots forth, and that space comes up, and in this sense it brings forth a tree and some fruit for 2,000 years, and then it's ripped up, it's gone, and then all of a sudden we're going to go back and finish. Right? Hopefully that's another way of explaining it. I just realize sometimes that's what I do. I explain things over and over, maybe a little bit differently to help you understand it, and I was just realizing that's exactly what we see in the Bible. It constantly tells you the same thing in different ways, hoping that one of these ways will be what gets through to you, right? Because the first way I said it, it's like, huh? The second way, huh? Third way, huh? Then the fourth way, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, I get what you're saying. So hopefully, it doesn't take four, but hopefully, one of them, Anyway, so I thought all this was interesting. But this guy, Nelson Walters, I hope his last name is Walters, it's something with a W, uh, was saying that that the man-child isn't the church because it's a man, and the church is not a man. It's like, yeah, that makes total sense, but at the same time, we are the body of Christ, right? So, yeah, it explains why all of a sudden it's the man-child goes up, and then it's just the focus on the woman here. Yet, we do have something interesting that he brought up, that it says, the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Now, if her seed was Jesus, the church, and it's caught up, then, who's the remnant of her seed? And he was saying, well, this is the Christians, right? And I was like, I don't think so, and I'm going to tell you why. One is this huge gap here. Huge gap, like from this time right here, this whole church age, to the end of the world, there's nothing going on with the seed. Like, why that gap there? There was never any kind of inquisitions or the Roman lion pits or anything like that. There was nothing like that with the Christians. Nothing going on. I mean, he kind of skips a lot of things, and we don't really deal with anything until the end. That's not the main point there, but just something to think about. Why the big gap? Not only that, a lot of people take the Christians and think that, well, if the Bible says you're part of the church, well, then you're saved. An example would be the Seventh-day Adventists. I used to be a Seventh-day Adventist, and they would believe that they were this Laodicean church, right? And as a Seventh-day Adventist, I would study this, and this just put a lot of fear into me, reading this as a Seventh-day Adventist. And this church is not saved. It's not. And the Seventh-day Adventists love to say that they are these Laodiceans. So, just because it says you're the church doesn't mean you're saved. As the Laodiceans here, Jesus says he spits them out, so they're not in Jesus. Jesus says he's on the outside here, knocking on the door. So right here, he says, I spew you out. So you're not in him. He says, behold, I stand at the door, knock. Anybody open the door, let me in here. I'll have dinner with them, right? So he's not in them, they're not in him. So they're not saved. And here, they are blind and naked. Naked means that they don't have their own righteousness. They don't have God's righteousness. They're not saved. Right? That's why he's telling this church, because they're claiming to believe in God. They're claiming to be Christians. But that doesn't mean they're saved. And then you have over here, Philadelphia. There's actually nothing bad said about that church. But up here to Sardis, it says here, says that thou hast a name that thou livest and art dead. Now, Jesus tells us in John chapter 5 verse 24 that once we believe on him and believe the gospel, that doesn't just mean head knowledge, but heart knowledge, believing the gospel. Like this church at Philadelphia here, you have passed from death to life. It was like what Jesus said to his disciples that he was calling. One of them wanted to bury his father first, and Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Because we are all dead until the Spirit brings us to life by being born again. So this church is not born again. Right? They have a name that thou livest. Oh, I'm Christian. But they're dead. That's because they might not even know the gospel like the Seventh-day Adventist. They might just have a head knowledge of it. Like, oh yeah, I believe in God. I believe Jesus is God. And I believe he's the Savior. But they don't truly believe in their heart that they are a wretched sinner. That they need a Savior. They don't really realize what Jesus has done for them. It's never really clicked. Jesus talked about sowing the seed on different types of soil. Some of the soil is stony and it never really takes root. So it looks like you got a Christian, but then when shit hits the fan, the plant comes tumbling down and blows away because there's a stony heart there. It never really got into the heart. Right? So when you're reading about these churches, it doesn't mean they're saved. So the reason why the church isn't mentioned, and it still talks about the remnant of her seed, well, that's because there's a lot of Christians who are going to be left behind. They're not Jews, so they're not with the woman, but there would be the remnant of her seed. So it's not the complete church, because as we see here about this church of Philadelphia, that they have a door open to them. Well, what is this door? Well, he says here at verse 10, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. And in the very next chapter, we get an explanation of this door. As John tells us here that the door is open in heaven, and he hears a voice like a trumpet, saying, come up hither. The rapture. And he's to show things that are here after the church age. Immediately, in the twinkle of an eye, as lightning going from the east to the west, he was in the Spirit. So you see here the rapture, John being one man, representing the one body. Or as you can see here, the man-child, as we're talking about here. Right? Now, what this guy has to do, Nelson Walters, is apply the same thing that he did to this chapter, that it's a mirror, and it's telling you the story over from two different point of views, to the entire book of Revelation. Because this is telling us what it just told us from chapters basically 6 through 11. Right? Chapter 6 through 11, it tells us basically from here on is just another telling of chapter 6 through 11, right? But we're missing something, because this tells us something that happened 2,000 years ago, right? Verses 1 through 5 here. But what is missing? Well, what is missing is actually Revelation chapters 1 through 5, the church age. He's retelling the story, telling us all of a sudden way back 2,000 years ago, but he's skipping over the church age because it's not important through what he's telling us after chapter 5. Church age isn't important anymore. He's focusing on Daniel's 70th week. He's focusing on the Jews here. So the church age is gone. That's why it's right here is basically Revelations 1 through 5. Because he's telling you something that happened 2,000 years ago. So this is basically the gospel that he wrote, John's gospel, right? Then this space right here is Revelations 1 through 5. And it just so happens that verse 6 would be the first seal, the sixth chapter, Revelation 6. The first seal being opened, verse 6 here in Revelation 12. And then it's telling us all the way through here the rest of what's going on. And that seems to be what's going on. I'm not, again, this is thinking out loud. I'm not setting this in stone like I know this is how it is for certain. But one thing I see very clearly is Revelations 1 through 3, an introduction and talking about the church age, the things that are, right? John's in the church age at the time that he's writing this, the things that are, right? Then in Revelation 4, he's taken up and being shown what comes hereafter. It's the end of the church age, Revelation 4 and 5. Those who are part of the Church of Philadelphia truly believe the gospel in their heart and have been born again and sealed with the Holy Spirit of God. They are raptured. I can see that clearly. It's clear as day. Now, after that, at Revelation 6, and as it goes on, it's a little bit different because we have something linear from verses 1 to 5. But then afterwards, we got some linear things, but then it seems to be overlapped and told to us over and over again in different ways. And like our minds need to be, in a way, rewired. We definitely need to prayerfully read these things and study these things to start to grasp them. But at the same time, maybe it's not meant for us. We're meant to only see enough to pass on for the people who are going to go through. And then they are going to break down what's going on. I don't know, right? Again, thinking out loud, throwing this out there, see what people throw back at me here. But yeah, I just wanted to break down what he was saying about Revelation 12 a bit here, and he's talking about some of the stars and the sign and the stars. Right? There was another video he had about the Revelation 12 sign back in, I think, 2017, and he was saying, well, how do we see it now? And it was interesting, but some of the stuff he was bringing up, he wasn't saying this is how it is, but some of the stuff he was bringing up, he was sharing some videos from other people and their responses to his questions, and they made it sound as though that the tribulation were already in it, such as Revelation 12 sign in 2017 was actually the start, or 7 years of plenty. Some people were saying, okay, at the Revelation 12 sign, like we see here, then it says that the woman flees into the wilderness, right? For 1,202 days, so 3.5 years. So he's saying, well, 3.5 years from that is um, basically Passover of 2021. And obviously, nothing happened there concerning Antichrist or anything like that. You think a lot of these things would be noticeable, but a lot of the stuff they were saying, it didn't add up. But at the same time, he wasn't saying this is going to happen. It was like just theories about what could be happening. But I couldn't help but think of this. I was like, why would you ever think you're in the tribulation? If you doubt it, you're not in it. As in Matthew 24, verse 21, Jesus says, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. For the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." So if you have to ask if you're going into the tribulation, if you're not sure, you're not in it, right? Because I didn't even know about the Revelation 12 sign in 2017. I didn't learn about that until 2020, 2021. So, yeah, if we were in the tribulation, I didn't notice that this supposed pandemic thing didn't have a big effect on me. So, I didn't really notice anything going on here. Things were weird and annoying, but I didn't really deal with persecution and anything that I would say was tribulation and apocalyptic, right? I would say that it was more of a warning and a foreshadowing that things are going to get bad. Like, if you're not going to stand up for what's going on now, well, then we're going to just step it up. We're going to keep pushing it to see how far we can go. We're going to take as much control as we can, and we'll take it all. If you'll give it all, well, you give an inch, we're going to take a mile. You've given more than an inch, so we're going to take the whole 9 yards, right? So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to talk about a couple of these tabs here. Again, this is thinking out loud, because I've been actually entertaining the idea that Trump is the Antichrist. Because I was thinking about the Revelation 12 sign in 2017, and I remember them talking about the Bethlehem star showing up twice recently, and that this hasn't happened in obviously 2,000 years. And I was, looking into this, and the Bethlehem star is a conjoining of, apparently, from what I'm seeing here, is Jupiter and Venus coming together, and ends up producing this very bright star. And that's interesting because Jupiter represents the Messiah planet according to the Hebrews, and Venus, Virgin, and they come together. Bethlehem star, the Messiah has been born by the Virgin, right? But yeah. And I know Venus is supposed to be the goddess of love to the pagans, and Jupiter is Zeus, but they've obviously twisted things and distorted things to their own views, but it's basically based off of the gospel and the stars. That's something I don't feel like getting into right now. But anyway, because of that, I was looking into this, and it was in 2015 that this Bethlehem star was seen for the first time. I don't remember when the second one was, or if this was the second time. I don't remember. But I was looking at this, and it was in 2015, uh, less than a month before this, because I think this was in, oh, this also was in June. So this was only 5 days before that. Trump announced that he was going to run for president. So I was thinking about it, and we already know the Messiah has been born. So the Bethlehem star can be a representation of a few different things. Again, thinking out loud here, not something I'm saying is true. Kind of like when I made the video about, is Donald Trump the Antichrist? Question mark. And I threw out a bunch of things showing how he very well could be. People didn't even entertain the idea, didn't ask anything, didn't show why they would disagree or anything like that. So, I gotta put that disclaimer again. I'm starting to feel stronger and stronger that he is, but that doesn't mean I'm right, right? I'm open to being wrong about this. But anyway, I was thinking that's interesting because the Star of Bethlehem could represent a couple different things. Either possibly the 144,000 being born. I can't quite see how that is it. But it could be something to do along the lines of false Messiah, an Antichrist, because we saw the Bethlehem star twice. Now, there's an issue with that, because the star is supposed to represent that Jesus was born, right? So that would mean that the Antichrist was just being born. So then if he's, mimicking Jesus, it would be some 30 years from now where he's actually come of age and that he's going to do the things that he's going to do, right? But I don't know. It could be some kind of spiritual born again thing, right? The Antichrist has been born again. Could be something along those lines. And that's where it would connect to what I'm showing here with Donald Trump announcing he'll go run for president. I think right there should have been a telltale sign where we see these things in the stars. Then somebody like him pops up who's obviously, he's not a Christian. He's obviously doesn't care about other people. He's been a manipulative scam artist. He's a con artist talking about the art of the deal, that he just tells you something so great and fabulous that you believe it only because you want to believe it, and that's why you accept the deal. And then he just used that in politics, telling everybody, I'm going to drain the swamp, and I'm going to clean things up, and I'm going to make America great again. You believe it because you want to, not because it's true or it's actually possible. It's just a hope and a prayer that you want so bad that you're just going to go with it, right? So this guy pops up, and he's very pompous. He's the best at everything. Whatever you name, he's done it, and he's done it better than anybody, right? People have called him God, and he just accepts it. He doesn't tell them not to do that. So thumbs up to them. He's always doing this 666 thing, even doing it with both hands and whatnot. If you're not familiar with that, it's supposed to be like a 6 coming from your middle finger, and then from your ring finger, that's another 6, and then from your pinky finger, you got another 6, right? Some people will think, whatever, not a big deal. It means okay. All right, whatever. Just saying that he's saying these things, like he comes out with this story about a woman helping a snake, and then the snake turns on her and bites her. And he was just like, well, you knew from the beginning that I was a snake. And we've all known from the beginning that Donald Trump has been this rich, selfish, scamming, pompous ass. But then all of a sudden he runs for president, and all of a sudden he's the most honest, good-hearted politician. He's actually the real deal. And people are falling for it and supporting him and helping him out. And I thought it was weird that that switch happened. Because there's a lot of people who always looked at him like that, all of a sudden looking at him as a hero. And it's like, you just fell for the art of the deal. He just told you this bullshit story because he knows you want to believe it so bad that you're going to believe it. And you just run with it. And you're going to ignore everything bad about him because your hope is so strong that he's a good guy and that he's going to do the things that he said. When it's like, not only is he a politician like everybody else, but he comes from a background of being a manipulative scam artist. So it's just crazy how he just slingshotted up there. And what was actually very interesting was when I was listening to this Nelson Walters. He was bringing up this guy talking about the different star things coming up. And he was talking about Revelation 12 sign. And he was talking about what happened after that was the planet Saturn went from the constellation of the serpent wrestler into the constellation of, oh man, I can't remember what it was now, which sucks. But he was explaining it and was talking about, well, this seems to point to the Antichrist. Because Saturn represents Satan, Kronos, what have you. And it just was kind of interesting because he was saying that it's going to move into this position, I think he was saying in 2024. And I was like, well, who's going to run again for president in 2024? And I was like, okay, so the star things are lining up again. Guy's obviously not Christian. And these people are going after him. I was like, if he is not the Antichrist, he's a pretty good example of what the Antichrist is going to be like. Where he's such an obvious bad guy, yet people still go after him mindlessly. So, yeah, I mean, if he is not it, whoa, right? But anyway, I guess wrapping up that thought real quick here is just you know what? There's a lot of people thinking the rapture, just actually in a couple days from now. We got Rosh Hashanah coming up, Feast of Trumpets. I'm looking forward to it, hoping and praying it is the rapture. I do want to see more people get saved, but at the same time, it's almost like they made their choice. Hopefully now, when some shit hits the fan, rapture happens and all this stuff, that they'll actually pay attention, they'll wake up, and they'll come out of this. But it actually makes a bit of sense here. Hear me out here. We got the rapture going on right now. And then the Antichrist is let loose to do his thing, to go and conquer. In 2023, Trump can become the Speaker of the House. And if that happens, he doesn't have to wait to 2024, but he might get the power in 2024 by Biden and Harris kind of dropping dead, right? And then he could come up as president because the Speaker of the House is third in line. So you would have Nancy Pelosi have to drop out, Biden, and then Harris. And then you've had 3 rulers, 3 horns plucked up by the roots so that he could spring up. I mean, it's a possibility, right? Not saying it's going to happen. It's thoughts out loud. Just putting it out there. Bouncing it off all you. Anybody who's going to listen to this stuff. So, yeah, that could make some sense there. But then again, I'm not going to lie. I could be just trying to fit everything around Trump being the Antichrist. That's a possibility. I'm not going to lie, I've seen enough things to be like, hey, this guy, he fits the deal. I'm just trying to see if everything fits. And sometimes you don't realize that you're trying to put a puzzle piece in there that doesn't fit. And it takes you a little bit to realize, okay, it doesn't fit. And you got to look for a different piece, right? So I might be doing that. I'm not going to lie about that. But anyway, it's definitely something to think about. Because this guy, he got some kind of stranglehold on people. My nose is itching like crazy, so I keep doing that. But anyway, there's some things to look into concerning Trump as well, because in Daniel, we read about the Antichrist understanding dark sentences and worshiping a god of forces, a god that his fathers didn't worship, and doing this witchcraft stuff, some kind of magic. You know what, maybe if I search that real quick, I might do it in a second. I'll explain myself first. Trump actually fits this. He understands how to talk and to manipulate people and to dismiss the truth and to get people to believe lies. He seems to understand these dark sentences, right? And he wins people all over with flatteries. It's another thing he said to do. He conquers with flatteries, right? And not only that, if you look into like QAnon and the people who support Trump, there's this cult of Kek, where they're doing this meme magic and this stuff with Kek to actually get Trump into office. So they're doing these weird rituals that you may think are whatever, but we're told about the Antichrist doing weird magic stuff. And look what's going on, right? And they're open about it. It's not as if they're hiding this kind of thing. You go look at it. It's Kek, K-E-K. If you haven't heard of it, it's this frog god from Egypt. And they've been doing this Kek magic stuff to promote Trump and to back Trump and to help him get in office. I'm not saying it's what got him in office, but it's something. And he got in there, so what can you say, right? On top of that, in his penthouse office, he has a lot of gold set up all around the place, and this big mural on the ceiling of Apollo, the sun god, who is the destroyer in Revelation, the god of forces, the god that his fathers didn't worship. So we see a lot of connection. And the way even Christians are just worshiping this guy and kissing his ass is insane. where I can talk about this kind of stuff and they're just coming at me. And basically their mindset is, well, it was better under Trump than it was under Biden. And it's like, so? You're just completely dismissing this guy's character. You don't know where he's leading you. He's winning over your trust, like he's done with a lot of people, and then he's screwed a lot of people over. So, he warned you that he was a snake. He did. So he bites you, and you're poisoned, and you're like, I'm gonna die. Well, you knew he was a snake the whole time. But anyway, let me see if I can just go to Daniel real quick and see some of these things here. Alright, I was on Daniel. Okay, I'm not exactly sure when this starts. I think it might be 8. I'd like to use my e-sword to search through the stuff, but sometimes it crashes when I have the camera and that at the same time, and I don't want to risk it after being on this for so long. Alright, this is actually about the he-goat and the ram. Let's go over here. Let's just see what comes up. I probably could search a couple of the places here. Dark sentences. Oh, that was actually 8. It was there, 823. In the latter time of the kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and holy people. And through his policy, that's very political, right? Also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. Craft. That's two things. That's twofold because Trump claims to be a builder. He loves to build and he does all these buildings. Probably help build the temple. But you can also throw witchcraft in there, right? And he shall magnify himself in his heart. You see this openly. Like, he doesn't have even a hair on his body that's humble, right? And by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So let's just see what else we can see, and then we'll wrap this up. Basically just going to skim through the next couple of chapters to see what things might be said. Maybe about the little horn. Stuff like that. If I don't see it, whatever, I'll end the video. But just want to go through the stuff real quick. Alright, there's Daniel's 70 weeks. So let's go on through here. Oh yeah, there's Cyrus. There's a lot of people who look at Trump as Cyrus. He'll gladly take that and get blessed and flattered with their words and stab them in the back. Alright, I think 11 might be where it starts to explain the things here. Alright, so let's go through here. I'm not going to go to 12. I'm pretty familiar with 12. So we'll just look through here real quick and see what comes up of it. Okay, here's a Western king right here. Shall forsake that holy covenant. And this is the setting up the abomination of desolation, and it says here, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people who do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And this is where the people are dying by the sword, captivity, and by spoil. And it says, now when they shall fall, they shall be hoping with a little help. But many shall cleave to them with flatteries. Again, with these flatteries. As we say, it's even to the time of the end. Because a lot of people say these things have happened. And in one point they are true, but there are, what is the word? Types of what's going to happen in the future. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. He shall speak marvelous things against God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation shall be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Now this hasn't happened, but I can see Trump, and if you can't see him exalting himself, even claiming that he's God and the God of gods, then you're not paying attention to his ego and how he just prospers in everything he does. He's like got the Midas touch thing going on, right? He says, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women. A lot of people say, well, see, he actually desires women, so he can't be. It doesn't say he doesn't desire women, it's the desire of women. It's like saying, nor the desire of men. It's men's desires that he doesn't care about. He's saying that he doesn't care about women's desires, which Trump doesn't. Nor regard any God, he shall magnify himself above all. But in his state he shall honor the God of forces, right? And the God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. This is exactly what we see in Trump's estate. Gold and silver and precious stones to this god Apollos, god of forces, which his fathers knew not. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strong God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. So yeah. So, something to think about. Again, thinking out loud. Again, Trump could just be a type, but he seems to be fitting the bill for basically a Hitler. I'll explain real quick. In Germany, before Hitler took power, they had a democracy where they had elections for their chancellor. And the left took over and completely destroyed the economy to the point where they had to use a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread. So it was really bad, which you never know could happen here, right? And then Hitler comes in claiming to be able to fix all this stuff. And he did fix the economy. And people loved him for it because he took them out of poverty. And then they eventually made it where there's no more elections he's basically permanent chancellor. And he started out being a friend of the Jews, an ally with Russia, very similar to what we see going on in America and with Trump, where shit can really hit the fan, things really go bad economically, and then Trump claims being the only one who can fix it because of his ego. People want to put him back in office, and he starts to fix some things, maybe with the St. Germain Fund. And then people want to make him permanent president, king, basically, like they did with Hitler. At which point, he turns on the Jews and battles with Russia, right? It talks about the Antichrist coming in and actually having, what is it? It says he has disturbing news from the north and the east as he comes into the promised land, because Trump already moved the American embassy to Israel. To the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. And I wouldn't be surprised if he actually wants to go there and rule from there. Sounds crazy and far-fetched, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's something he does. I think things are gonna get real weird, real crazy. I think we're gonna see some weird stuff, even before the rapture. Things are already getting pretty weird. But anyway, throwing this stuff out there, seeing if anything sticks, not claiming to be a prophet, claiming to reading these things, studying these things, listening to other people, how they see things, just trying to put things together. But anyway, that's that. Thanks for watching. Take care.